Welcome to episode 63 featuring Dain Ehring.
Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We are back with another episode of 10,000 Miles with my very good friend and longtime colleague, Dain Ehring. Dain, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing very, very well. Dain, for those who might not have seen the prior episode, because this is a repeat performance for Dain, and we've got so many cool things to talk about today that are super topical and important for people moving in their careers. Can you reintroduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, but by the way, congratulations. I've been watching your podcast. It seems to be taking off. I remember
Thank
you
you.
starting like getting 10 people watching it. It was a big, fantastic.
It was a big deal, right?
Now you're
Yeah.
way past that. Yeah. But my name's Dain, like spelled as it sounds, Dain, Dain, and I know Vic from when I was an entrepreneur inside. I came out with the first cloud computing in our space, our mutual space, which was residential finance and consumer finance. Before that, I got into the space. I saw the idea when I was working for Eric Schmidt at Sun Microsystems JavaSoft. There, I was doing market development for Java. That's when we were only 80 people, and then went to 800 people. Java was just getting going. The internet was just going. And then before that, I was a startup company that got bought by Eric and then Scott McNeely. And then before that, I was recruited by Steve Jobs, and I got to work for him. I got the blessing to work with him for about 3 years. And before that, he got me over. It's a secret organization called the NRO, and that's in Washington D.C. And back then, nobody knew about it, but we were using his technology. He just got kicked out of Apple. He started a company called Next Computers. We deployed Next Computers for the very first internet, and then he recruited me into what he was doing, and that was my first. He brought me into Silicon Valley, and where I am today.
Didn't the story go, hey, Dain, I need 30,000 computers or
Yeah,
something like
it's
that?
exactly like that. Yeah, so he was my best friend.
Exactly.
He definitely voted, big defense to that budget than
Fantastic.
whatever part of that is.
That's good. So, hey, Dain and I share a lot of things in common. We talk about a lot of the same things. We're pretty close to the same age. And we have watched so many corporate soldiers go through their career. And it happened to me again the other night, Dain. I was out in a business function and I saw somebody I hadn't seen in 15 years and a person much younger than me. But they had looked like they had aged 30 years. And I came home and I said to my wife, man, if you're not careful and you're not taking care of yourself and you're not focused on your health and your well-being, you could maybe make it to the finish line. And then after that, fall a yard past it.
Right.
And so Dain and I have been chatting lately about change in diet, change in lifestyle. We've got some different approaches to the physical movement, but all getting good results. But we share this affinity for the carnivore lifestyle that we seem to be getting great results on. Dain, by the way, dude, I haven't seen you in a few months face to face, even though our texts go back and forth. You look freaking amazing, dude. You look so good. You look 15 years younger.
Yeah,
your skin color, you're vibrant. I mean, you look like a young stud. The ladies watching this show are going to be wanting to figure out how to get in touch with you. I mean,
Good, that's what we
you
want.
better alert your wife. There's
I'll let
action
her
going
know.
down.
I'll let her know.
So,
you look good too.
Yeah. So it's funny. I started carnivore in June of 23, and I did it solid for well over a year. And I had a contract with my wife, by the way. By the way, my wife is the same size, maybe even a little bit smaller since the day I met her. She's got amazing genetics. She works hard. She goes to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, loves it. That's her outlet. That's her vice. She really likes it. Not a bodybuilder, very, very fit person. Even through 3 kids, just really, really incredible. Loves it. Grew up with it in her life. Her father owned gyms, was an athlete into fitness. So not something she really ever, had to force. But my wife also lives a very balanced lifestyle when it comes to eating and things. She doesn't have this thing that, you and I share, which is this extreme mindset. Like we're going to do something, we're going to go all in, right? I have, hey, I'm going to wear rubber gloves. They're going to come up to my armpits. They're going to be thick. They're going to be resilient.
Right.
It's like, we
That's super
overdo it.
good. Yes.
And so for my journey, I woke up in June of 2023 and I've tried all plant-based and I did all of these things. And I started 3-4 months prior doing a ton of research on carnivore. And I started following a bunch of people online that were really into this carnivore lifestyle. And as it goes in my life, I woke up one morning and said, I'm carnivore effective right now. And that was it. And I went on a journey. But the contract, coming back to the contract I made with my wife, is that I didn't want to be disruptive to our life, to our social life. She's an amazing cook, puts a lot of heart, love, and soul into the food she prepares for the family. And I didn't want to say, just eating a steak. So I went all protein based, eggs, chicken, fish, protein of all types. I did nothing else. But the one caveat was if it were somebody's birthday, I would have a small piece of cake. I would celebrate. It was sort of, our contract. And I'm not a big drinker, but if we were out socially, I'd have a cocktail. Okay. And I had amazing results. Dude, I lost first of all, every marker in my blood had improved incredibly significantly. I had lost 35 pounds. I was down lean. I was doing great. And then we went away on a trip. And I think my wife, I'm not blaming her. I know it's going to sound like it. I'm sorry for the folks out there listening. And honey, if you're listening, I'm not blaming you.
It is all her fault.
Yeah. If you say so. But, I last summer, I sort of got pressured to get off it. We were seeing friends. They wanted to go to Italian restaurants, try this pasta, do that. And I got off the carny wagon from July of last year up until March of this year. And I couldn't recognize myself, not only in looks and in clothing and in size and in weight, but in energy levels. They were gone. They had evaporated, Dain. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was starting to think, holy cow, man, 61, man, I guess that's the age where you start you don't have this vigor anymore. And I decided at that moment I was going back to carnivore, and it didn't take long. So I think it was the day after my birthday, mid-March, I jumped back in. So mid-April, on it 2 months, and amazing things have happened already. I'm going to pause there because I could go for 100 years. I'm interested to hear about how your journey got you there and what differences, aside from this handsome look you have. You look like you're ready to play quarterback, by the way. I just want to let you know. Coach,
now you're making me
Coach,
blush.
I'm going to get you in because Dain's super tall too, guys. So, you can see over the line. But how did you get there? Tell the audience how you got there.
I went a little differently. So and let me say, I even tried going vegetarian. I did that for a year and a half.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when the COVID happened, I did everything you possibly could do wrong, including, started daytime TV, and whatever you put in my mouth, I put in my mouth, or, put in a glass I would drink. And so then when that got off, I decided to stop drinking, but I did something else too. I started with it was more of a mindfulness journey.
Okay.
I started contemplating. So I went the self-awareness route. And then I started being self-aware of my own body needs, and I just started eating steak, and I just started eating the things that my body wanted. I didn't even set out. It was not calculated in any way. I did try, I was in India. That's the reason I had to eat vegetarian, and came back, and I got really healthy. Like I said, I had the same results she was talking about in India on complete vegetarian diet. And I'm 6'6", weigh over 200 pounds. That is just the nature of the game. And when you're my height, so it's very hard to sustain. In India, you can do it. I came back to the United States. I ended up just eating cheese, right? It was very hard to get the protein and to sustain that Even my own doctor, who's from India, she told me that you're going to have a very hard time here. And I fought her on it, and I lasted about a year and a half on it and couldn't do it. So then and then, you can only eat so much fish. I find fish very rich. I do like fish, but I can't eat it, 2, 3 meals a day. I'm not eating
Mm-hmm.
fish. I'm not, and then also, then there's the trick too. You get into the size, and you're right. You said something that I'll have to admit in front of who's ever listening. Yes, we do things very extreme, everything in excess.
Yeah.
That's just the DNA. And so, of course, I get really obsessed. I don't want to use the word obsessed. I get into it, and I
Yeah.
get into it to be the best at it.
Yeah.
And it takes a focus, and that means I kind of limit my focus because I know I get into it. So I can't do 15 things very well. I can do 3 things. And right now, I'm doing this one thing very, very well. I'm very into it, and I'm knowing everything I can. And it started with really getting very well about knowing what my body wanted and my mind and all that kind of stuff. And then that just came with it. And now I started getting into what does my body want as well, and starting to get into the health to a point where I'm having I have a very good relationship with my doctor, kind of like you see on some TV shows, and I have
Yeah.
that kind of relationship. And I get in arguments with her.
Me too.
Dane, you got to go to the Mediterranean diet. Dane,
Yeah.
you're doing this. I say, well, you don't even know. I mean, what do you weigh? You're 110 pounds. You have no idea. Yeah.
My doctor is fantastic. She's been my same doctor since I've moved here 18 years ago.
There you go.
She's wonderful. There's never a moment where I think I've been rushed out. I haven't spent enough time. And she looks at me like she cares about me like a family member.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It's incredible.
I have a second wife through mine. Yeah,
Yeah.
she gets just mad at me, and then my wife, and then she decided that they were going to have exchange email addresses, so now they can
Yeah.
talk anytime. And so, yeah, there's also no, excuse my language, there's no getting around it. There's no
Yeah.
bullshitting my doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
which is a stupid thing to do, right? If you bullshit your doctor,
Yeah.
bullshit your
That's
lawyer,
against the
bullshit
point.
your priest, why even have these things, right? So I don't do that. But I wanted to say the point I was trying to make before I got excited about this is, being a guy, especially as an aging man, they tell you you're supposed to have how many kilograms per pound you are of protein, or how many grams.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So my grams, of protein, it turns out to be like 160 to 200 grams of protein. That's you can't, an egg is what, 9 grams. That's a lot of
Can't
eggs.
get it on eggs.
No, you can't get a vegetarian
No,
diet.
you can't get it.
So
It's not enough.
yeah, it's a lot. So I switched, and I just switched naturally. Wasn't even thinking about it. And now I got so into it, then I could only consume so many calories just naturally, that I just eat a couple steaks a day and a grapefruit. That's all I do, and I don't miss the diversity. I don't miss any of that stuff. It just feels
I know.
good.
I crave it.
Yeah,
Let me give you some stats. I know you like numbers.
I do.
Have you ever seen the in-body scales?
Mm.
Big
Oh yes,
scale.
yeah,
Stand on them. The handles
yes.
come out
I
and you
do have.
hold the handles. Yeah.
My doctor has one of those. I do use that.
So they have them at the gym. They've had them, and when I first got on carnivore, about to sneeze, sorry. They, my buddy's gym has one. So I would show up there at 7 in the morning once a week and do my thing. The cool thing about it is that, and whether you believe it's dead on accurate or not, it's, first of all, the scale's like $10,000. Money doesn't always mean it's right, but there's an investment in technology there. And even if you think it's a percent off this way or that way, it's a measurement over time and you can see trending in the right direction. So if it said I was this percent body fat and maybe I was higher, but I went down 10%, I feel like I kind of went down 10% or wherever. In a 6-month period, there's one measurement there of visceral fat.
Mm-hmm.
Visceral fat. And I'm going to start off by, I should have said this up front. I'll probably put a disclaimer up there. We're not medical experts. We're sharing our own experiences, right? Proceed at your own caution for sure. But visceral fat is deadly. It's the fat surrounding your organs. And if you think about that, and the visual I have is I got this nice organ and it's sort of pumping away or it's doing its job. And if I put a clamp around it and compressed it, or a sock, right? And then I squeeze this off and I start really squeezing and compressing, how effective is it going to be?
Right.
When you talk about blood pressure, constricting things in your body, rising your blood pressure, visceral fat is there. Every doctor, by the way, will tell you my visceral fat was over what they called the healthy range. So on this particular scale, 10 or under, the lower the better, was ideal. I started at, I think, 15. Bad, just really bad, visceral fat. And that sucker every week, boop, 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 boop. And it did it in decimals. 14.8, 14.6, 14.1. And I would see it. So here's the crazy thing. When I lost that 30 some odd pounds, in the mix of all of that, because it was checking my body composition, I gained 2 pounds of muscle.
Right. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So it was all fat.
Right.
Because with the carnivore diet, you become what they call fat adapted.
Right.
So your body is seeking fat for its energy sources, for its sustainability, versus going for sugar and glucose and all of these things that happen real quick and make you feel like garbage. But to lose 35 pounds and add 2 pounds of muscle, I mean, that's unheard of. Who does that?
In that time frame, and you're not a professional athlete, and
No.
you don't have a bunch of handlers.
I
And
play one on TV though.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So that kind of like, and so when I brought these stats and metrics to my doctor, dude, it was like, you know, what's she going to say? She's like, I don't really like it. I'm worried about your cholesterol.
Right.
I'm worried about
So it's a cholesterol.
your calcium score. You please promise me you're going to go get another calcium score test and all of these things. And I was like, yeah, I'll do all of those things. And I did. And listen, my calcium score had gone up a little bit, but I was going up before all of this.
Right.
And when I spoke to my cardiac guy, you know, a cardiologist, he's like, and when you looked at this guy, he was like fit as a fiddle, ran ultra marathons, the whole idea. He's like, yeah, I got high cholesterol. I eat perfect.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, genetic.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, a lot of genetics that have to do with it. He said, just keep doing what you're doing. And when I walked into my last appointment with him, he said, he walked in, he opened the door and he looked at me, he goes, whatever it is you're doing, don't stop.
Right. That's the thing, and that's where I think you want to lead us on our conversation. It's more than just one thing.
Totally.
And I understand the reason. Some of these, you know, I understand the science behind it. You're trying to find a couple markers that you can manage those markers. You can find a marker that you can actually influence by, you know, a particular drug. That's great, because then you can find somebody that's not necessarily living healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then you can give them this particular drug, or give them this particular, you know, prescription, and you know, and elongate their life. That's a good thing. So I get it. But when you're doing everything together, then you have to look at those markers holistically. And so you're doing something, and then you're taking another thing that influences it, you know, and then you take something that influences your metabolism, and you take something to fluid out your metabolism, blah 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 blah. You keep on taking, and it just becomes this you know, cascade or waterfall that you got to be very careful with. So getting back, you know, it's just like anything, getting to, you know, simplifying, getting those variables out of your life, I think is what I'm concentrating on. And again, I'm not a doctor. You know, I'll tell you everything you want to know about global warming. How about that? But no.
That'll be another podcast, by
There
the
you
way.
go.
We will talk about that. I want to go back to part of the original theme about being a professional, whether you're male or female, working in the corporate world. And I will tell you, there are very few people I've seen who have spent decades working corporate America, very demanding. We as Americans work crazy, incredible hours. And, you know, I know that through friends and colleagues who have a workforce all over the world. And we by far, you know, I pull out factory workers and these people that are being subjected to, you know, the terrible conditions. But in a professional workforce perspective, we as Americans have just put work, you know, the Sundays are no longer the holy day. Saturdays are no longer set for Sabbath. I mean, it's like people are working. And with these things, okay,
Right.
that work follows you around as your digital leash, and you're responding to an email and you're doing all these crazy things.
Right.
You know, what I would like to get out in this episode is, hey, you know, looking sort of into the lens of the future, how critical it is for people to fit in food, diet, health, wellness, and an activity plan that suits your desires and lifestyle. Is this to catch this, early in your late 30s, your 40s, your 50s, before it's too freaking late? Because while you'll hear the stories about somebody who made an incredible comeback at 70 something and now they're the weightlifting senior champion and all this stuff, people love those stories because they're not every day. They're rare. What did you do through your career? Was there
Well,
was there ever a struggle career
yeah, of
wise?
course, wise. You were talking about, external indicators. You were talking about external people, the people you see, and like, man, that
Yeah,
person put a lot of age, put 10 years on
yeah,
himself, in the last since I saw him last, and we all have friends like that,
yeah.
and I'm sure as I do my own personal experiences. I also know from personal experience. I've also gone through those periods myself
Me too.
where
Absolutely.
it's just the perfect storm of all these of stress and not caring for myself and overcoming with different behavioral lifestyle things that are not good, healthy for you, maybe over drinking or something like
Yeah,
that, and you think as a young man, you used to be able to do that stuff and get better, heal yourself or get healthy again in 2 weeks,
yeah,
and then it was 4 weeks, but it's still doable. You always knew you could do it. Okay, I'm just going to go a little longer and I'll get back in shape, but maybe it'll take me 5 months this time, not 4 months. You always thought like that.
yeah,
And as you mature, it gets longer and longer and longer to do that. Now we're talking about all this great progress we're making on changing our diet, but there's a lot more lifestyle changes that you and I have had. We've got rid of that stress that's in our
yeah.
lives too. Don't forget
hmm
about that. And it's that the whole holistic, that vertical holistic,
Full stack, as
full
we say in the tech
stack.
word.
Yeah,
Full
and that
stack.
so let's not discount that when we're talking about
No.
health. So I had been through that, and I see pictures. Used to be these photos on Google because the magazine articles would come, and there's me before,
hmm
and there's me after, and it's just night and day. And like you, I like to see, everybody likes affirmation, and I like to see, progress. And somehow when you see the lack of progress or actually going down, it was the opposite of progress,
hmm
declining. Somehow your mind just kind of just says you don't see that as much as you see, the progress. You have to look at it uh, there. And so we've been there, and so I think that the knowledge, I hope to convey on this, that, and I hope if I wish I was 40 listening to this and actually took it very seriously and not just thinking I have to do a little bit more. I can abuse myself just a little bit more, and then get back in shape later. It's always that I can always do it later. There's never, if I just save enough more, money, I can save a little bit more. I
Yeah,
can always do this. I can always, if I just get this one thing done, then I can spend a little bit more time with my wife or a little bit more
yeah,
time with my kids. If I just get this one thing done, and we kind of, it's like wait, where when your airplane's delayed and you keep on waiting at the gate, you should have got a different flight. We all do it, and so getting that mindset that your performance and if you're a leader in an enterprise or a leader in anything you're doing, whatever you're trying to do, you signed up to be that professional athlete on what you're intending to
totally.
do, and that takes a holistic. You have to be on your game, and there's all kinds of things. You cannot be a professional athlete, the best of the best, and if your mind's not there, if you're not
Yeah,
100% focused, right? If you're not, you could have you could have the best body in the world, but your mind is distracted, or your girlfriend just broke up with you. You're not going to have a
yeah.
good day, right? All these
You're
things,
gonna get impacted.
right? You're going to get impacted, and all these things. You have to think about all these things together, and that's where I'm coming from, and that's how I even got into the diet we're talking about. I did not approach this diet as saying I got to get my physical body in health. It started getting holistic for me,
Yeah,
and that just came with it, right? It just came
nice.
with it, and that's the benefit of it. And I think the science is starting to look at that. I think corporations are starting to look at that in terms of productivity, and how hard it is. You and I both know how hard it is to go get new talent. It's better
Yeah,
the talent you have than going and try to get somebody. You're not going to get somebody new to replace somebody for a year, and then that person's not going to work out or whatever, And you want the
very
people
difficult.
the people who are doing the really good stuff or your talent, and you want them to be the best they possibly can be. It's in your best interest, right? And it's not being, you want their success, right? If you're a good leader, you want their success too, and that
Of
comes with
course.
that whole stack. That comes with everything. That means
Yeah,
also, emotional health.
oh yeah, I want to cover one thing, and then we're gonna dig into the stack a little bit. It's funny because you mentioned about the now. You wish you to go back to your 40s and listen to this and taking it real serious. I have a friend, we'll keep his name out of it, going through making some very tough decisions in his life. And it's not health related. It's not, nobody's going to pass or die or is not terminally ill, but it's a big next step in something that he wants to do in his life. In one side, he's got this great comfort where he is now, what he's doing. But you know what it's like when you're ready to step over the line, that feeling you get, that anxiousness of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? I'm doing that. I always tell people that feeling like that's called growth. That feeling, that's when you're stepping outside of the zone that you're completely comforted in. And when you look at it like that, you go, oh, I'm growing. Yeah. Okay. Now that doesn't mean do stupid things, but I want to read you a text that I sent him. So
Okay.
funny. I sent him this today, actually.
Okay.
We had a long conversation last night. He's very stressed. And I said to him, and just, for folks listening, for you, Dain, my perspective on this comes from the fact that my mom passed away at 63. My wife's dad passed away at 47. My dad passed away at 73, and my mom and dad in their 50s lived as if they were going to be 150, like saving every penny, not treating themselves to things they could have probably afforded, just very degeneration. And I said to him, hey, I just was thinking a lot about you last night. I said, now is the only thing we're guaranteed. Too often we sacrifice the present for some imagined future that one day may never arrive. I said, we all say we'll travel someday. We'll do this if I have 2 more clients or I get another raise next year, or we'll reconnect with somebody we really love and care about, but we're just too busy. We can't make the time. But life doesn't wait, my friend. I said, people age, chances and opportunities disappear before our eyes, and health is certain to fade. The clock isn't just ticking, it's moving in one direction. It took me a while to write this. I really was trying to think about it. I said, living fully in the present, it's not about irresponsibility, abandoning ambition, or putting your life at risk. It's about realizing that joy doesn't come as a delayed reward. It's meant to be a part of the journey now. Saving everything for later means often missing everything. And then I close it with, you can't collect memories when you're gone. You can't stare at the river from your grave. And the people who matter, your friends, family, are here and now. And they're not going to be in some vague someday. Live wisely, for sure, but understand this is the life we have. That's where life is actually happening. And that's it. And I sent that to him, and he called me, 10 minutes later and was like, dude, how long did you take to write that? I said, not as long as you think, but how long did it take me to think about that?
Right.
Been thinking about it since our conversation last night. And these perspectives, especially the generation before us, Dain, all my grandparents lived into their 90s. So by every marker, my parents thought that they were, squirreling their nuts away for a life that was going to exceed their longevity. My parents probably holy crap, I'm going to live to be 100. I got to have enough money for that.
Right.
Social Security's not going to get me there. I don't want to be a burden on my kids. I don't want them to have to convert their garage to an apartment. Right? And so, boom, my wife's dad dies at 47 while we were dating. Sudden death. Athlete. Like, he died on a basketball court, fit, in shape. My mom gets diagnosed with ovarian cancer at 60. They tell her she has 3 years.
Man.
Set your watch. 3 years later, she's
Yeah.
gone. And then my dad died some years later, 6, 7 years later, of a rare form of leukemia. That they said, this is very odd. This is normally found in children. And because he wasn't prepared physically, they were limited in the options in his treatment. Because some of the treatment that they give children for this particular condition, they can sustain because of their healing power at their age.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad in his 70s, who was overweight, who smoked up until the day he was diagnosed, who didn't go to the gym, he definitely had sleep apnea and was deprived, so he was poisoning himself the whole time. He just they didn't have these options, and we missed them both. But that's I'm trying to balance this thing, and so for folks out there, man, it's like, yeah, don't go spend your last dollar and skid into home plate with 3 pennies flying out your back
Right.
pocket.
Right. Yeah.
But
And if
you know, you got to pay attention now. You know, any thoughts around that?
yeah, I
Anything
got
come to mind about your life?
two things. One, I can still remember this, and this is probably 15, 20 years ago. This in California. I still remember this one bumper sticker saw in traffic up in the Bay Area. I'm sitting there all pissed off, excuse my language, but there was this bumper sticker, and the bumper sticker wasn't selling anything. It just said, "Don't postpone joy."
Mm.
And there's just absolutely no reason to do that. If I think of now, I'm telling you where I am, but the second I got another thing to say. If I think of the realization of that, and that if there is what is the meaning of life? Everybody searches for that, or what is the plan? What is this? What is that? I think it really is just to be happy. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
something so innate and so real that we are here to be happy, and then we just cloud misery on top of that.
Yeah.
I think by nature we're happy, and we cloud misery on top of that. That could be a whole different. That's another hour over there. But
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
I know so many. When you get to a point in your career, I know a lot of contemporaries who have built multi-billion-dollar companies finally saw their success, and they're withering away. I mean, they finally hit the bell, the Nasdaq bell, and
Yeah.
they're going to be on the planet for probably another 5 years. It's like, what's the point of that? And they could point to the speeches they wrote for a president. They could point to all these accomplishments, but at the end of the day, it was a goal for what? And there's a lot of things they probably missed out on. I also know the rest, the other family members. They have, to a person, they have one of their children feels uh, distant from their father or their mother, or a lot of them been through a divorce or things like that they probably missed out on because they're so focused. I mean, to do something very well, you do have to focus.
Yeah.
But the thing is to get in the mindset. And I also want to come clean that if I listened to this podcast at 40 years old, I probably would have blown it off
Yeah.
because I had that I can do it, that attitude that if I just do this one thing more, that not living in the now. Now, if I'm going to live in the now, the thing I realize now that I hope to convey to other people, I hope that if I was to tell, but my son, who I adore,
Yeah.
the message I want to get to him right this second, what would be that message? Is if you want to be the best today, why wouldn't you want to be the best today? You want to be the best today. And to be the best today, you can't be the best today if you're fatigued, if your mind's not there, if your body's not there, if your emotional health is not there, if your
Yes.
love health is not there, if your love intelligence, if all those things are not in there, you're not being the best. You're not doing it. You're not
That's
showing
all
up.
part of the stack.
You're only 70% there, right? That's the point.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be the best of the business, you want to get the best return on your investment. Most people start their businesses or do the big stuff. The Beatles, it's the filet mignon of your life. You have that period of your life
Yeah.
where you're at your top of your game. That's the filet mignon of your life. You're willing to invest the filet mignon in your life, not on being a sports car driver. You're going to invest that on your business, on creating a career, on creating these things. I mean, this life, better the world somehow, and be the best at it. that's my message. That's my message for my own son, my own daughter.
It's a great message. And I'll tell you this. I mean, you just broke down a bunch of the stacks, your emotional health, your physical health, your relationship and love health, and all of these things. Any one of those areas broken down is just a shot at the knees of the other pillars.
Right.
It's just, you've got to, you can't, it'd be nice if you actually had this little grading system, and maybe we'll come up with one together, where you can evaluate yourself in life and give it a score. I'm sure these exist. We'll GTT it and it'll come out in 5 seconds. And then that should give you the areas to focus on. You might be super fit and in the gym, but you're not sleeping. If you're not sleeping, your cortisol levels are going spiking and going the roof. You're probably dealing with inflammation. It's funny, talk about a blueprint. I wrote this book and I released it July of last year called The Lucky 13 Core Competencies in Leadership. That's a blueprint for business success about competencies for leadership. You can go in and you can assess yourself across these 13 core competencies. And if you follow like Dr. Peter Attia and things, those guys, but those are like concierge docs that not the everyday doc has access to. You go to the, not access, but the everyday guy and gal doesn't have access to go spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year on a concierge doc.
Right.
It's expensive. It's very expensive. But they have these things and they break down your stack and they measure you across all of these things, and you hyper focus on the areas where you're very low and you maintain or somewhat focus in these other areas. But this stack is very important. How's your sleep, by the way? How are you sleeping?
Well, I think I sleep about 6 hours a day.
Okay.
And it's just natural. And if I need a nap, I work out of the house now. If I need a nap, a cat nap, I'll take a cat nap. But, and I know everybody says get 8 hours. I looked at people that are really, historical people I looked up who respect, and, like say Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
He slept 4 to 6 hours,
Einstein.
It just is what it just, I don't feel sleep deprived. I do take, we might be jumping, but let's talk about that one of the healths I think is called existential health, and that is your meaning, having something. People might call it your spiritual health or something like that, but it's really it's beyond just my cognitive health, right? It's beyond that, having a sense of meaning, let's say, for yourself. And
would you call it purpose as well, maybe? Or is that different?
Purpose, but not to meant to say, but I think it's very shallow to say my purpose is to make $1 million. When I say purpose, I mean, it's part of, I want to be a great father. I want to, some people get caught up in leaving a legacy or something like that, whatever that purpose is. But it is purpose. It's a meaning. It's a sense of fulfillment, overall fulfillment. That's what it means.
Yeah. Okay.
That fulfillment, not affirmation. An affirmation could be your bank account. Affirmation could be a dance with a pretty girl, but fulfillment, could be, instead of a dance with a pretty girl, could be a deep love that you have with your soul partner for the rest of your life. That building equity, that fulfillment that comes into building a real home, and not just the biggest home on the block, but a real home that your kids feel, even if they're in Japan, they feel like they're part of home. That's what I kind of meant by fulfillment. That's that existential.
Yeah, that's great.
And there's this practice I got from India. It's called the Brahma Muhurta. Okay, but this is 2 hours. It's between 3:30 and 5:30. It's right before the sun comes up, and there's these 2 hours where you're at your best, where it's quiet and it's the time for you to be up. I started setting my alarm clock, and then I just do it naturally now. And it's the time I take for 2 hours that is for myself. I purposely don't read the news. I don't do any business. I contemplate. I meditate. I contemplate. If I'm in a prayerful mood, I'll do some prayer. I might even decide to write my wife a love letter. But I take those 2 hours out of the day. Nobody's around that. Sometimes I've used those 2 hours if I have, like, say, when I've done this for about 20 years, and I've done it, or I say 15 years. I have done it. I have taken the time, maybe if I have a board meeting that day, I'll get up and mentally prepare myself. I
Yeah.
won't even read my notes, but I'll just mentally get in the right state. It's a very quiet time. I make it very selfishly for myself. So that's how that kind of influences my sleep pattern. So I go to sleep around, say 9 or 10 o'clock or whatever. But
Is there something to the 3:30 to 5:30, or is it just those 2 hours of absolute
no, there is something.
quiet
Well,
time?
this is traditional. It's kind of
Okay.
Vedic, Vedic philosophy or Vedic.
Okay.
So there is something to that, but there is some science to that too. That you're that early morning hours, you have high testosterone, you have high mental acuity. There is something physiology going on that is there. It's about, I
Okay.
think you're about 15%. Your IQ is up about 15% during those hours. It turns out. So
That's
there's some
pretty
science.
incredible.
There is some science behind it as well.
Great time to learn,
Yeah, 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 exactly. But
you
a great
know?
time also to explore your, like I don't want to overuse this word self awareness or self
Hmm.
exploration. But to your point, it'd be nice to just sit and have a calculator or an iPhone app and get your that health stack, right? That we just talked about, emotional health, mental health, and constantly watch it for you. And they have a red light. I need to do more of this. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't hit my water. I had to get that gallon of water in a day, right? But really, becoming self-aware, then you don't need that. I mean, you yourself are your consciousness is in tune with everything's going on, and if just something's out of whack, and that's your opportunity to get it in there and correct it.
Are you familiar with the Whoop?
No, no,
The Whoop is, I'd say over the last 3 to 4 years, it's taken the fitness industry by storm. It's a wearable device
okay,
that measures a lot of things about your health. Much, much different and deeper than like an Apple Watch does.
okay,
Okay. And you'll see now that I mentioned to you, you'll pay attention. It's just a little square device. There's no face on it. Some people wear it on their wrist. A lot of people wear it on their forearm while they're doing their athletic stuff, right?
okay,
So if you watch golfers, a lot of golfers have it on them.
okay.
You could see it because of the shirt. I'm sure a lot of people have on it. But there's this one stat on there. My son has been wearing it now for, I guess, about a year or so. But there's one stat on there with he and my son-in-law, by the way, my son-in-law does this as well. And I was just shocked that this is such an important marker for them. It measures your recovery.
Oh, I believe that would be important. Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
they are so hyper focused on their recovery.
Mhm.
I think it's phenomenal, by the way, to be young. My son-in-law is going to be 30. My son is 27. They're both very fit.
Mhm.
But to be focused on just that stat. Now, there's a myriad of stats that come through it. But the one we chat about and it's almost gamified. My son will say, got over 90% last 4 nights in a row,
Right.
but, and then I always say to him, because that's just who I am. I go, hey, that's cool. Can you attribute that to anything you did that's repeatable? And of course, the answer. It's always yes,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Because the recovery just didn't
Right.
happen, right? Oh yeah, I made sure I just put the phone down at night and I cleared my mind and I laid down and I relaxed and I fell asleep very easily and I had a great night's sleep and I didn't toss and turn and then my son found that it was the time of day he was eating and when his last meal was and was not was impacting his recovery. So he was pulling all these levers, which was super cool. Yeah, I ate too late or I ate the wrong stuff too late
Mhm.
because I slept the exact same time. But
Where
then
does
I
it get?
woke up.
Where does it get its data? I don't want to. We don't want to do a commercial for this product, but I'm interested. Where does it get all the data? It's just following you, or do you have to put something in on your?
No, you put nothing in. It's taking all your sort of the biometrics
Oh,
from this device, and there's an app on the phone, and you have to obviously subscribe to it, and pay money for it. You pay for the device, but you look at it all the time. And during workouts, it tracks all the things you would think it would track.
well, let's hit on that metric because I think it's very powerful. That recovery metric. Again, it's more. It's not. I understand what you mean in this context, where I work, I get my heart rates, and how fast can I get it back down to a normal
Yeah,
state? That's recovery, and that is a measure of
yeah,
your resiliency and your
yeah,
health. But that recovery is also, going back to the stack, things like mental health. how fast can you recover from a setback? How fast can
Yeah.
you recover from a failure? How fast can somebody, it's all about expectations. An expectation wasn't met that you thought
Yeah.
was going to happen in say the work environment. How fast can you recover from that? And I think that's a great measure of that they call it a deep health. That's the word for it. If you do look it up,
Okay.
it is starting to get some traction on it. This concept of deep health that is more than just one or two things, and they're all interrelated. And there's actually a tie-in because we're also talking about maybe AI replacing human intelligence, but human intelligence is the same thing because there's other
Yeah.
facets besides just cognitive intelligence. There's also that social intelligence, that intuitive intelligence, creative
Yep.
intelligence, all those things that come in that make us, divinely human. Well, the same is true for our health as well. That health has other being sapient adults, being more than just a piece of meat. There's other
Yeah.
things that go into that health and
Yeah.
that connection. I have it came to mind, and I want to share this. But that mind body connection. Let's just take the mind body. I had 5 years ago. I had it was a very important like boardroom meeting, and excuse me, and and it was a big deal. I didn't know it was ad hoc. So I walk in and there
Okay.
was a bunch of high. I was either going to look like an idiot or a hero in about three
Okay.
seconds. I wasn't prepared for this, and I got very nervous. My mind put a lot of emphasis on this particular meeting, and they wanted me to pontificate for 20 minutes on
Okay.
something that I wasn't prepared for. Right?
Okay.
I didn't even prepare for the meeting. I was just coming to shake some hands, and so my mind got me all stressed out. And then I noticed my physiology got really stressed out. My heart started
Totally.
pounding and my hands started shaking a little bit. And how a man can hear it in his voice, right?
Oh yeah.
When another man or another person in the room is scared of, when you shake somebody's hand, if they're scared of you or not, right? You know that. Or,
Of course.
I shouldn't say scared of you, but you look up, you see if they're
Intimidated, possibly.
intimidated or
Yeah.
or they're sharing some anxiety. You could tell the physiology. And so, but remembering I brought up my yoga experience, and I started yoga breathing. I just breathed for a count of 10 and breathed back. And
Hmm.
I breathed 4 or 5 times at a count of 10. They call it, I guess the new term is box breathing, whatever you want
Yeah.
to do.
Box breathing.
And I
Yep.
did that, and I got my emotional state back down, and I actually performed extremely well during that 20 minutes. But that's that mind body connection. So my mind affected my body, and my body was going out of whack. And so then I used my body
Yep.
to get my mind back into line
You
through
know,
the
there's
breathing
something
technique.
interesting that there is a connection not only between it doesn't always only go that way.
Mhm.
Like if the mind and the mental state deteriorates and all of a sudden you see people like they're leaning and the arms
Right.
come in and the voice gets a little timid. There's a way to come out of that by adjusting your physiology to the state that you're in when you're at your peak. And I've
I
seen
believe
it
that.
happen during a lot of the Tony Robbins stuff
Hmm.
where he's got people in this sort of depressed state and he goes, hey, tell me about a time where you were at your best.
Hmm.
Tell me about your time where you felt most confident, most empowered, right?
Hmm.
And so the person starts digging in and goes, well, it was this particular time I was leading this project, or I was with my family and we were having this great time. And he said, okay, great. He said, how were you standing when that was happening? Well, stand that way now. Where was your head? Where was your neck? Where were your shoulders? How were you breathing?
Hmm.
Like, how were you feeling? And so he starts recreating the physiology
Hmm.
to elicit the mindset shift.
Hmm. I
And
I
saw
believe
it
that. Yep.
happen. So
Yep.
it's so hand in glove how this stuff works. It's pretty incredible, which is why we have so many levers to pull as humans. This thing we call the mind, body, soul, spirit is so intertwined, and there's so many vectors and angles of attack that are just amazing for us to be able to regulate this whole thing that we have here.
Right. Yeah, and you have to care for it. You have to care for the whole. You have to care for all of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Like if you have the most important if you have the most important board meeting in your life and you woke up with diarrhea, it's not going to be the best board meeting in your life.
No, it's going to be shitty, as they say. You know, let me give people an example of what not to do. Okay. So there were a number of times in my career where I had to commute for work. And when I say commute, there's two factors of commuting. One is I relocated to a different state for a job. I had to take the job right away, and I had to spend a number of months traveling. Leave the house Monday morning at 6 a.m.,
I remember that.
fly home late Thursday night, and spend Friday working either in the local office or remote, have a couple of days off, and go right back to the grind. During that process, I really, because I wasn't around my family, I would take on extra work stuff, right? I didn't prioritize slipping in health, sleep, mind, wellness. So this was my Monday, Dain. I'd leave the house at like 5 a.m. I'd be on a 7 a.m. flight. I was living in the East. I'd fly west. I literally would be able to show up in the office by about 9:30 in the morning local time because of the time change. I'm a half hour late, but I've already put in probably 4 or 5 hours. I'd work all day long. I'd be in a suit. I'd eat lunch in the local cafeteria or at my desk. And then I'd have a dinner that night with colleagues because other people were doing the same thing. They were traveling in, or we'd have a vendor in, or something would happen. And so that day would go to about 11 o'clock local time. I was never really a big drinker, but 1 or 2 drinks repeatedly adds on calories, adds on stress. It keeps going on. The big meals, listen, I'm fortunate and blessed to say this, but it was a curse at the same time. If you're not controlling it, we're eating at the best places,
Right.
with the richest, biggest food you could possibly imagine, and that's nice for an occasion. It's not nice for everyday life.
Right.
It's, bad things happen. And so over the course of that time, every time I've done that, I have not been in better shape as a result of that than I was when I started. And alternatively, even when I worked in an office, when my span of control got broader, for instance, when I was at JP Morgan Chase, I had 1,100 plus people in technology that worked in my organization. We were in 3 countries in 27 cities. And when you're a leader of an organization, you have to be present.
Right.
And this was before Teams. Okay.
That's right.
And so, we had Cisco video and we had big rooms set up with it, but it's like, I wasn't going to get in front of 200 people in an auditorium. And so I would leave Monday morning. I'd go to 1 or 2 cities. I'd come back Thursday night. I'd rinse, repeat, do, 100 to 150,000 domestic miles, but I did not care for myself. What I should have done in retrospect, and I'm lucky I'm still at an age where I bounce back from it and I'm on the right path again. Food, fitness, and mindfulness, at the very least, should have been 3 things on my list to schedule time for.
Right.
Including sleep. And, if I missed a dinner or I missed a breakfast or I set a pocket of time that, hey, I don't meet before 9 o'clock because I'm up at the gym. Like 100%. You set these boundaries and all of a sudden, same shit gets done, by the way. Funny.
It gets done better. Right.
Yeah. Gets done better. Gets done better. Did you travel a lot during your
when I
days?
it was because I was a CEO of a growing company, startup company that continued to grow. So it was 7 or 8 cities in 5 days. I was on a plane. I had a plane strap, and it's not healthy. You can do it. It's not healthy for anything, and it's not healthy for the people that care for you that are around you either. It's not it's unfortunately it's necessary. There's nothing better. I mean, Zoom has definitely made an impact, but there's nothing better than that human connection, that the chemistry that goes on when you're one on one, and when you're dealing with you're dealing at the numbers that I was dealing with, contracts or agreements or what have you, you'd have to be there. They want to know you're there. Or for example, I had, 300 people in India. They want to know you're
Yeah.
there. You go there and make sure that they see you because Zoom doesn't work. And
No.
so it was very, very hard. And my wellness, all of the, you had to leave a couple things out. So that a couple things even got, even if I thought I was, I'll go run in the, down on the, have you ever used, I'm sure you used the hotel gym.
Yeah.
Those things are so depressing. I
They're
can't
not
do it.
great.
I might as well,
They're
yeah,
horrible.
yeah, excuse me. And, um,
Little pooch-a-rooch. It's all good. It's
yeah,
part of the
yeah,
show. Just
yeah.
wants to be on 10,000 miles.
108
Wants to get
pounds.
some
Yeah,
likes and some
yeah,
subscriptions.
yeah. So, yeah, I want to go back and let's talk about that. Let's talk
Yeah.
about what are some of the things you can do that I
Yeah.
wish I thought about. One, at 40 years old, yes, there's that physical, and I could have done a lot better. And even if I took that time out, I could have done it. And of course, everybody will say also make sure there's time for your family.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have I read, to my little girl back then? Now she's 30 years old, but sitting there, this beautiful, cute little girl, you're reading a book to her. So you are reading, you're home, you're reading, but you're also thinking about something at work, right? Your mind's not 100%
Yeah.
there,
You're
right?
not
So you're,
present.
you're not present the way you should be. And there's things like that. So there's things that should be intuitive that man, if you take anything from this, write that down because that means everything. I tell you what, being a business leader and going through a divorce, or being a business leader and getting estranged from your kids, nobody wants that. That's not going to make you doing the best. You're not going to be the best leader if those things
No.
are happening in your life. So to prevent that, or to focus on the things that you care for, I think, or husband. I want to use the word husband, not being sexist, but husband, or to stewards of the things the gifts are giving you. That's a very important thing. But I
Yeah.
think also you have to make sure that you're not like I think we become part of the things that affect our mental health is we become like those decorator crabs. We keep on putting things on our back because we go to these meetings and we see a banker and they're having a steak and a martini, so we have a steak and a martini or whatever. We keep on
Yeah.
putting these things to kind of fit in and create those connections where we think we need to connect. And pretty soon, all this junk and resentments and regrets start piling on top of you and you don't really notice them, and then that gets very heavy for you, and that affects your emotional state as well. So you need to start thinking about that as well. How do you do that? And so one of the ways that I've taken one of the things I've done besides that early in the morning, which I don't really think about it too much early in the morning. I think about it's more outbound, more about positive, what I want to have happen. That's what I mean, physics positive.
Yeah.
Um, but on that reassessment. I do at night do a reassessment. What are there some regrets I picked up during the day, or were there some resentments? Resentments are just expectations that weren't met, right? So did I say something wrong to somebody maybe it wasn't a big deal, but
Mm-hmm.
I still thinking about it. I do my list, or was there expectation that wasn't met? Do I have some resentment that maybe it's still in me, and I want to get rid of those? And the best thing to get rid of those is the next day go and talk to that person, even if
Yeah.
it's no big deal, even if you're the boss, and even this person is 2 or 3 layers down. You go talk to them, and say, "Hey, I spoke to you a different way. I shouldn't have done," or this, and you get it off the table. You get it done.
Yeah.
You'll be the best leader in the world, and your emotional health. You keep your emotional health sanitized. You keep your emotional health clean. I
Yeah.
think is a very good tool, in that stack that we're talking about.
It's a great tool. Hey, I want to give another piece of practical advice. Mine's going to be a little less deep and very simple. And it's inspired by what you said from 3:30 to 5:30. What I had found over the course of my career, especially during the corporate America days, is you can easily get bogged down and if you work for a company that works in multiple time zones, you can easily find yourself in meetings from 7 a.m. to 6 or 7 p.m.
Yep.
Local time, going from one meeting to the next, and eating lunch at your desk through those meetings. Meeting. Okay. Now, if you're a developer, you're likely not in that space, but there are many roles because especially if you're a big company, you're involved in so many different projects. You're putting so many different things together. What's not left there is time to think. Okay. So early on in my career, I never reserved time to process, think, be creative, be strategic. I was the proverbial hamster on the wheel. When I got home, I had zero overhead for any sort of things that were going on in the family. A little scuffle, problems of the day, kid problems. I was a jerk, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me
I
too.
wasn't my best self because I would demand that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was I not doing? I wasn't present with them.
Mm-hmm.
So as I started wanting to transition that, I realized first and foremost, for me to be creative at work, I needed to block out time. And so I blocked out 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., no meetings, perpetual placeholder on my calendar. I blocked out 11:30 to 1, perpetual placeholder. And that was my first start. And so I had a clear morning. I had ability to think, prepare for the day, do whatever. And then 11 to 1, it's not like I'm sitting there in like, in the lotus position and, meditating, which might have been a good use of my time, but
Mm-hmm.
it was saved for things that might be ad hoc or come up. But if not, we left the building and went to lunch.
There you go.
And the rule was no business talk because the brain needed to be filled. What I had found over time is that those hours reserved for strategy, thinking clearly, changing the mood and the pivot and the thought process, firing different things in the brain, it turned out naturally to make me more present at home. When I got into this side of the business 8 years ago, my calendars were immediately blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
They were blocked out for those times. As a matter of fact, now my calendar is blocked out on Friday from noon all the way out. It's just blocked because I want to wrap the week. I want to think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to invest more time with my family, and I want to even prepare to be more present for my family. So I'm learning now to really have a switch to be my best self in all places I'm actually present in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more fun at parties, Dain.
How
I
how
am.
can you be more fun at parties? It's impossible. You're already too fun.
I'm more fun at parties. I am more present in conversations with dinner. I am
That's
far more present with my wife. I have way more overhead than I've ever had for stress because my stress is down incredibly low. And so for people out there listening, you gotta prepare this time. And if you have the inclination to wake up at 3:30 like Dain does and do your 3:30 to 5:30, great. But if you got to do it from 6:30 to 8:30, it's a start.
yeah.
I know it's not back where your IQ is 15% higher,
Well,
right? But
or yeah,
take the
or
time,
do it
right?
once a week. Do it
Do
once
it
a week.
once a week.
Well, once a month. Try it out. I mean, you'll find it's quiet. It's surreal. I wrote down. I said that I mentioned that I did get the chance to I work for Steve Jobs for about 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I took some notes thinking about this coming into this idea, this deep health and
Mm-hmm.
that stack and I don't want to paint a picture that I was socially intimate with him, but I was certainly had working with him
Yeah.
developed a hero worship of him. He was probably about 5 or 8 years older than I am, someplace around there. We both had hair, and so how did he spend his day?
Yeah.
And here's my notes. I'm going to look to my screen as I'm saying this.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But I did write this down. He would start his day on that mindfulness. He would start his day meditating. So he started his
Right.
day. He woke up early and he did his reflection. He did his meditation. He meditated um, with in that lotus position. He got that from India. He
Yeah.
came to his success with that. He minimized some of the variables early on. So like you and I have kind of grown into the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but our wardrobe is pretty simple, right? I wear the same thing every single time. I just wear a black shirt, and he wore a
Yeah.
black turtleneck
Yeah. The
and
mock
blue jeans,
turtleneck.
right? That's all
Yeah.
he did. He didn't care because he just didn't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
And it became his signature, but it wasn't he didn't set out to create a signature. And then he on his physical. So that's one thing. That's his mindfulness stack. He on his physical side, he would do a meeting. And I know, I'm sure I've done this before. I got this from him, and it's really effective when you have important meetings. Instead of having it in your office or in their office, you take a walk with the person.
Mm.
You know, or you might take a small group of engineers. You might take them out into, say, their maybe is a little common area and a fountain
Yeah.
outside or something like that. And I found that very effective. So, but walking and getting some energy as you're having some important meetings is very good. Very good. He was a very light. He was a vegetarian. He was actually believed in fruit, but he had his own diet and he ate very light. And what he did is he created his own work blocks. So these were his times were very, very intense. He had to get some intense stuff done. It was scheduled. He was untouchable then. Nobody could get near him.
Okay.
Okay. And then but at the same time, he also created these blocks of creative collaboration. So we get his best of his best, and they would get in a room and talk about something he wanted to talk about. And those meetings, by the way, were very intimidating because he was a peer to the top engineers in the world that he could command. When I say command, they wanted to work with him. That's what I meant by
Yeah.
command. And, but he would get in their face and argue and da da da. And there was that whiteboard session that was very intense. He would do that and block that out knowing and get a lot out of that. And then socially, what he would do, during, business time, what he did, and I did use this too in my company, was very, very effective. He created, because when you're a business leader, as you know, you have to create separation from you and everybody else. So you're not really working in teams anymore like you used to work to get to the position you are. You're above the team, to create that. There's a sense of authority, and you just can't handle it, and you're just not working as teams. And probably if you are working collaborating with a team of peers, they probably want to have your job, right?
Yeah.
Are they that a team, or are they a competitor?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
Of course.
So he would set up a time, about once every week or once every other week, probably once every other week on a Thursday. And he would allow anybody to come into, we had a little common area, and the engineers or people come. It was for 2 hours, and it would just be him and maybe the CFO. And he gave you 2 hours, and he would have a little presentation. Here's how we're doing, and and then the CFO would do something. Here's what the numbers are. And then everybody got to talk to as a peer, like, well, Steve, this is bullshit, or I thought you told me we were going to hit this number, da da da. And you were not going to get in trouble from this guy. So he created that team, that collaboration, freedom,
Mm.
and then it turned off. When it was off, it's off. You could not talk to Steve like that, right? You had your opportunity.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah,
cool.
you had your talking stick, around the campfire, as you will, with that freedom to talk. You had the floor, and it was very, very powerful. Where he created that sense of, people felt they were being listened to, and for him, he created that social that's sometimes missing. You find yourself in the corner office, you don't really have the same relationships. You have your board, you have the people that
Yeah.
work for you. You don't have that social that is very powerful that you need. And then
It's
he
funny.
Go ahead.
It's funny. I just want to jump in here because I've recently having a conversation with somebody is to think how genius Jobs was because he hits every one of these things. There are three things to really making sure you're gonna develop a great team. And they need three legs of a stool, and they're non-negotiable. And if you don't have them, you'll never really have a good team. First thing that your employees need and the people that work for you is they need psychological safety.
Yeah.
And that is less about it being a therapist and more about being able to do exactly what you said,
Right.
right? Being able to have a good discourse and express how you feel about something, or maybe even try something and fail on a project, but you were really going for it and
Right.
like be good because failure is a component of success. You have
Correct.
to do it.
Correct.
The second piece is inclusion. And that is beyond the inclusion we think about when people, sort of politicize inclusion. Inclusion is what I do important and meaningful to the outcome of this business. And even down at the micro level in the organization to the macro level to the biggest, engineer and system architect, everybody needs to know how their role feeds the others. And then the last thing is a compelling future.
Hmm.
right? So what does my future look like in this organization? What am I working for? What am I working towards? And when you were telling me this story, Dain, I'm just like, that son of a gun hit all of those
Well,
things.
he did that too. I was going to
Yeah.
add to that list. What he did, he created that. That's this existential health. That we talked about
Yeah.
that sense of fulfillment. He created a mission. You know, when you work for him, it became, I don't want to use the word religion, but it became, you
Yeah.
had a sense of purpose. The company was doing something. You were bettering the world. You know, you were democratizing
Mm,
information. You're doing something that was meaningful, even though you had an
yeah.
everyday business. And he created that. And you reflected that on
Incredible.
all the time. He could talk about that all the time. And then also the last thing I'll say, he also was very conscious of the environment that he worked in. He brought in, and he just wanted it was very Steve, but he wanted a simplified workspace that created creativity.
So no clutter, nothing to
No,
clutter the brain.
no, no.
Much like the design of the Apple stores
Right. It was
themselves, very
exact. Yeah,
clean.
he designed those himself, but yes.
He
Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
incredible. Just very clean,
Yeah. Yeah. Just very,
plain,
very
completely
nothing.
clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Hey, Dain, let me ask you a couple of questions for like a little bit of a lightning round here.
Sure.
Outside of the obvious answer, if I were 40, I'd listen to this advice. What would be the one thing you'd tell somebody who finds himself in a stressful point of their career? Maybe everything we said about lack of harmony with their family, lack of time, lack of spiritual, physical, mental health. Um, what would be the one thing you tell them place to start?
Oh, yeah, I would start with yourself. I would start. It doesn't have to be at 3:30 in the morning, but I would
Okay.
start with yourself. If you can find 24 hours a day, if you can't find 1 hour for yourself, your own emotional, your own spiritual, your own conscious, cognitive health, get your
Mhm.
act together, and that might take time for you. It might take more than not just 1 hour, but develop that habit every single day. Then what you don't really have as much to offer as you could. And if you really want to do something important, if you love somebody, you got to start with yourself, right? And
Yeah.
so when that happens, and it has happened many, many times. So I am speaking from absolute experience. I have been to hell and back thinking I had nothing, or I have been no payroll and I got 100 miles to feed. I have been there so many times, divorce, all that kind of stuff. And you got to simplify.
Mm.
And then if you're going to simplify, you got to get it down to the very one thing. You have to find that 1 hour to get your head on, to get centered,
Yeah.
to get that weight of your presence. I'm talking metaphysically, and I don't mean to,
Yeah.
but then you got to get that from who you are, and then expand and do the things you need to do. You have to do that. If there's one message, it's you have to find that rod in the ground that is you.
Hey, to take it out of the metaphysical and put it in sort of rather plain speak, I mean, and it's funny because even I go back to Anthony Robbins a lot. He calls it the hour of power,
Yeah,
right? But we're talking about the same thing.
it is the same,
This is where you get your game face on.
right?
And this doesn't mean getting rod and pumped and ready to run through a wall. This is where you get organized. This is where your thoughts are free and clear. All of my best ideas, not some of them, all of
Oh,
my best ideas come in this state.
mhm.
Every one.
Yeah.
Every moment of clarity I've ever had in my life about something I was doing that I was completely screwing up. It's been this time. I don't get up at 3:30, Dain, but I'm like a 5-ish
Yeah.
riser.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we've got all these, the only other
That's
early
still
riser in this
better.
house is my daughter,
Yeah.
right? My daughter Mia gets up nice and early. She scared the bejesus out of me the other day. I was actually listening to something in AirPods and I started cooking myself a little bit of breakfast. And it was maybe 5:40, and all of a sudden she taps me on the shoulder. I freaking jumped through the roof because I wasn't accustomed to people being up. But get your game face on, get your
Yeah.
plan in place, free your mind up from the grind to invite other things in it so that you can be more creative, more productive. And honestly, back to the book, find the spot in your life, in your stack, in your ecosystem. People know.
Yeah.
Come on, people know. They know I'm too thin. I'm too fat. My blood pressure's too bad. My health is bad. I don't sleep enough. And I mean, we don't, checklist would be nice, but people know. People know if you're at McDonald's, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, probably not too good. We've seen the movie on that, Supersize Me. It didn't go too well for that guy,
Well, happiness is an attractor.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking of worrying about something, fear is also an attractor. If you're worried about something, that will happen. If you're happy and if you have your game face on, you know what you want, you're going to attract those things. You're going to manifest those things. People are going to gravitate towards you. The best of the best is going to come to you. Nobody who's the best. None of the A players want to work around somebody who's in a bad mood.
No way.
They don't.
Not in a
You're not
million
going to.
years.
So you want to attract the A players, the A of the A's, the best of the best. If you want to attract those, you got to be the best. That's the key, 100%. Because you're not doing all the work; they're doing the work.
That's
You're
right.
just being the leader. You're holding space, and you hold. I read this thing from Eisenhower because everybody has a bad day, right? Everybody. Eisenhower, he wrote it. It's got a great autobiography. I think it was autobiography, if not a biography. But he did something very important. So things got really tough. Yeah, this is the life or death of Western civilization, right? And that comes with some bad days.
Yeah.
And he knew as a leader that people would just be watching him and see his emotional state. So if he couldn't pull it on, if he was in such a angry, not angry, I don't know, he was, but in that emotional state that it wasn't good, he knew. He just got off premise. He just got in the car and drove. And I use that too. If I would get in some
Yeah.
times where I just got in my car. The best
Yeah.
thing I could do for my company and my family's get in a car and just go on a 4-hour drive. By the time I got back, I was ready and my state was there.
Yeah. You're ready.
Yeah.
But you knew that was a lever for you to pull, right?
Right.
You recognize the lever.
Right.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Hey man, this has been a lot of fun. And,
what would you say? I want to leave with
I,
what would you say? The one thing that if you were 40, what would be the one thing that you wouldn't blow it off? You'd say, "Oh, that was great. I'll hit that when I'm 60. These guys are 60. I'll hit it when I'm 60. I got another
yeah,
20 years. I don't have to worry about it now." What would you say to them?
schedule everything.
Mm.
Right. And so even the things you think you can't get to, you can. Can I get to the gym? Absolutely. Put it on schedule. Now, of course, schedule without discipline is nothing. You have to force this discipline, just like lifting weights. It's a muscle.
Right.
Schedule the 4 to 6 once a week. Schedule the 3:30 to 5:30. Schedule. If you looked at my schedule today, everything is on my calendar. Everything. Time for myself. Time to think. Time to do everything. Now I don't have sleep on there, but you know what happens at a certain hour at night? Bring. A
Yeah.
light chime goes off.
Who's the guy who wrote
Says,
Think and Grow Rich? So who's the guy? 1920s,
oh,
but he interviewed Carnegie and all that kind of stuff. He said the same thing you're saying.
Did he?
Very famous, very famous.
Hold on, I'm going to look it up. Think and Grow Rich.
So he did the same thing you kind of did on your 16. Is he went out and interviewed all the Carnegie Mellon, all those guys.
Yeah,
And
Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill is who I was
Written
thinking
in
about.
1937.
Yeah.
It was in the back of my brain.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I did read that book, so I guess it's in my subconscious.
Yeah.
But his 13 key principles. Schedule everything, because it's so easy when you do that to realize the time you have, because all the time you think you don't have, you flounder, you waste.
Right.
You sit around, you wait. Oh, I'm going to do that. Schedule an app.
Well, you become reactive.
If you're tired.
Yeah, your day becomes reactive.
Schedule everything. And by the way, for anybody out there who's listening who may be suffering from ADHD, this is a tool. This is an absolute tool to help yourself. I'm not going to say it's going to cure you, but it can give you a strategy to improve where you are, where you've got this short-term focus and you can't get your way. You might need to schedule shorter intervals of things.
Mm-hmm.
But for the longest time, I had to muscle my way into reading a book. Like the thought of reading a book, I thought my brain would explode. but I had to muscle. I had to muscle my way into the ability to focus for that long. So then I started writing books, but schedule everything. I was going to say one thing. Dr. Andrew Huberman. You know who he is?
Mm-mm.
I'll turn you on to him. He's a guy I check out all the time on YouTube. He's the head of neuroscience and ophthalmology at Stanford.
Okay.
He's got a podcast. He came to sort of prominence in the podcast world from being on Rogan, and he has an uncanny ability to explain neuroscience in the brain in a way everybody could understand. Super approachable, super articulate. So somebody said to him, "Hey, what's the number one hack, non-bio, that I can use to help create focus? I got a little, deficit disorder. Maybe I'm diagnosed, maybe I'm not." And he said, "Hey, it's simple. You got to start with 3 hours. You got to focus on something, whatever it is, doesn't care what it is, 3 hours. And every time you lose focus, you add 10 minutes until you're doing the 3 hours. Is it read a book? Is it write a story? Is it journaling? Is it focusing on a presentation you're working on? Maybe. Do not get up." He said, "Do not even get up to go to the bathroom."
Wow.
He said, and you'll find that the more you do that, in weeks of doing that, you will start increasing your ability to do that successfully. When you get to the 3 hours, your ability to go beyond is gonna go. And that's a great pearl of wisdom. But for me, schedule everything. Do it.
Yeah, that's very good.
Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.